I never planned to start life over at 66. After Sam died, the house stopped sounding like home. Every creak, every clock tick, everything reminded me he wasn't there anymore. I learned to live carefully, not to move the photo frames, not to plant new flowers, not to change the order of chairs, as if silence was made of glass and any wrong move could break it. Then one morning, I spilled coffee. A brown spot spread across the white tablecloth, like a full stop, and I thought, if life insists on ending a sentence, maybe I can turn it into a comma. That same day, I decided to sell the house. No drama, no tears, just the quiet certainty that it was time to stop living in a museum of memories. I packed 2 suitcases, one with clothes, one with courage, and I bought a one-way ticket to a small town in Oregon, Brooks Bay, a place where Sam and I once spent our honeymoon years ago. When the train started moving, I looked out the window. The rain hit the glass in soft rhythms. Outside, the world blurred into brushstrokes, like a painting half forgotten. I held an old photo of us by the ocean, smiling, alive, careless. For the first time in years, I didn't cry. I smiled, because I was finally moving towards something, not away from it. Brooks Bay welcomed me with fog, pine scent, and the taste of salt in the air. I rented a small cottage on a hill overlooking the sea. The owner, an old man named Harper, gave me the keys and said, "A painter used to live here. My son, Michael. He disappeared long ago. His paintings still hang in town. They have a strange way of finding people." I smiled politely, not thinking much of it, but later that night, I couldn't sleep. The wind whistled through the cracks like someone whispering a secret I couldn't quite hear. I made tea and stood by the window until dawn, watching the first light stretch over the gray water. And for the first time since Sam's funeral, I felt like I might still have another beginning. A week later, Brooks Bay woke to the sound of rain, heavy, steady, endless, the kind that doesn't fall but wraps around everything like a gray blanket. I decided to walk anyway. There's a strange courage in rainy mornings, as if the world hides your mistakes behind mist. The narrow streets glistened like wet mirrors. Every storefront had that sleepy, small-town charm. Antiques, shells, postcards with faded sunsets. And then I saw it. A small gallery tucked between a cafe and an old bookstore. Its sign read, Harper Fine Arts. The name stopped me. Maybe it was coincidence, maybe not. I stepped inside. The bell above the door gave a tired ring, and the smell of linseed oil and old paint filled the air. Inside, everything glowed with the soft melancholy of forgotten art, landscapes of the sea, empty chairs, shadows where people used to be. And then I froze. On the far wall hung a large canvas, a woman standing by the ocean wrapped in a green scarf, her face turned toward the horizon, her expression quiet, almost waiting. It was me. Or maybe not exactly me, but close enough to feel like recognition, even the way she held her hands. It was something only I did when lost in thought. A man behind the counter spoke softly. "That one's from the late collection. Michael Harper painted it just before he disappeared." I turned toward him. "When was that?" "Oh, years ago. Some say he drowned during a storm. Others think he left town, but no one knows for sure." He smiled gently. "Funny thing, though. People who see his paintings often claim they find something of themselves inside, like he painted feelings, not faces." I nodded, unable to speak. Outside, thunder rolled over the bay, and through the window the waves rose and fell, as if echoing the rhythm of my pulse. When I left, the rain had softened to a mist, but I kept glancing back at the gallery, at that woman on the canvas, as if she knew something I'd forgotten to remember. That night, I couldn't shake the image from my mind, the color of the scarf, the look in her eyes, and when I finally drifted to sleep, I dreamed of the sea. In the dream, someone whispered, "Find the key." I woke with my heart pounding. It was still dark, but when I turned on the lamp, there it was, on the small table near the door. A rusty old key, lying exactly where I knew it hadn't been before. Morning broke like a soft bruise over the water, violet, gray, and tender. I placed the old key in a handkerchief and walked toward the edge of town, where small houses leaned into the wind like tired fishermen. People in Brooks Bay didn't rush. They let the day arrive, the way you let a friend finish a story before you answer. The address the gallery clerk had scribbled for me led to a weathered cottage with blue shutters and a crooked porch swing. A brass plate on the mailbox read, Harper. I took a breath, knocked once, and heard the slow shuffle of feet on a wooden floor. The door opened, and an elderly man stood there, tall despite a slight stoop, his eyes the pale blue of late winter. "Come in," he said, as if he had been expecting me. Inside, the house smelled of salt and varnish. Fishing charts hung next to framed photographs, boats at dawn, boys with paint on their hands, an easel planted in wet sand. On a small table sat a single seashell, polished smooth by years of pocket carrying. "I'm Nora," I said. "I'm renting your son's old place, and I found this." I set the key on the table between us. He looked at it for a long time, not with surprise, with memory. "That belongs to the signal shed by the pier," he said. "Michael called it his quiet room. When the world was too loud, he went there to listen to the tide." "Did he leave it for someone?" I asked. "For someone who could hear what he heard," the old man answered. Then he motioned to a chair. "Sit. There's something you should see." He opened a narrow cabinet and pulled out a wooden box, its lid scarred by salt and years. He set it down, untied the cord, and lifted the lid. Inside were letters, wrapped in tissue and loosely sorted by date. The top one was stamped with a year I knew all too well, the year Sam and I had honeymooned here. "I never read them," he said. "They weren't mine to read, but I was told to pass them on when the time was right." I picked up the first letter. The paper had softened with age. The handwriting was steady, deliberate. I saw her again. Not a stranger, not a ghost, a true North. She laughed at the rain, and the rain forgave the day. I didn't speak. I painted the distance between us and hoped color would carry the rest. Another letter. "People say a portrait is a face. They are wrong. A portrait is the moment before a face becomes a mask. She holds that moment without trying. I think that is why the sea keeps her." And another, "I keep wanting to explain myself, and then I see the water and understand I don't have to. Some things exist only when we don't force them to become something else." I read in silence. The old man sat across from me, hands folded, watching not me but the space around me, as if listening for the same tide his son once chased. "Did he leave town?" I asked finally. "Or did the sea take him?" The old man turned his face toward the window. The fog pressed against the glass like a patient animal. "People like to choose endings," he said. "It makes the story easier to carry. I think my son did what he always did. He followed light until it became something he could not name. Maybe that was a storm. Maybe it was a road. Maybe it was both." He paused, but he left one letter sealed. He said I'd know who it was for. He took a small envelope from a drawer. The seal was still intact, a simple circle pressed into brittle wax. He placed it in my hands and nodded, giving me the permission I didn't know I needed. I broke the seal. "If you are reading this, it means you didn't stop moving. It means the house on the hill found its voice again and you listened. I painted you because I could not keep the moment any other way. I didn't come back because I kept walking. And sometimes walking is a kind of returning, if you let it be. The painting where the fog meets the shore is not an ending. It's a door. If life gives you another chance, turn the handle. The tide has more to say than grief does. M." I didn't realize I'd been holding my breath until the room swayed and steadied again. I pressed the letter against my chest, and for a flicker of time, I felt 19 and brave and hopelessly alive. "Thank you," I said. It came out a whisper. "This was for me. The old man's eyes softened. My son painted many people. Very few were seen the way he saw you. Grief wants us to believe our light is finished, but my boy knew better. We had tea at his small kitchen table, black, strong, the kind you don't dress up. He told me the harmless facts. Michael loved early mornings, disliked applause, kept losing pencils, sang badly, cooked well. He told me the harder facts, too. The winter his wife left. The spring the gallery almost closed. The summer he started walking the coastline at night and didn't always return by dawn. People will say he vanished, the old man added with a tired smile. But not all departures are disappearances. Sometimes they're translations. When I stepped back outside, the fog had thinned into a fine, pearly light. The town looked newly washed. I tucked the sealed letter back into the wooden box, then changed my mind and kept it with me. There are some words you carry, not to reread, but to remember you're not alone. I walked the long curve of the pier until my feet found the boards they liked. The sea breathed in, the sea breathed out. I slipped the key into my pocket and felt its cool, unarguable weight. Not the weight of loss, the weight of permission. I didn't know exactly what waited next. I only knew this. The part of me that had been living on pause had finally found the play button. That night, I spread the letters out on my table like a paper constellation. The dates, the phrases, the sketches between lines. They formed a map of a life that kept choosing wonder, even when it hurt. I thought of Sam, of the first years in a marriage where money was thin but laughter was thick, of the way we'd made dinners out of almost nothing and made feasts by calling them so. I realized I had been waiting for someone to hand my days back to me. But days were never taken. I had simply stopped reaching. I put the letters away, washed the cup, turned off the lamp. The cottage settled around me. In the darkness, the ocean spoke to the shore the way old friends do, not loudly, not often, but with enough truth to keep the night kind. And just before sleep found me, a thought eased through. Maybe the best part of a second act isn't what returns. Maybe it's what you finally allow yourself to begin. The next morning smelled like new beginnings, coffee, salt, and paint. I woke up early, long before the sun decided to climb the sky. The sea was quiet, like it had finally settled after whispering all night. I brewed a small pot of coffee, took it outside, and sat on the porch of the little cottage that had somehow become home. I hadn't painted in years. Back when Sam was alive, we'd spent evenings sketching sunsets together, him carefully trying to capture the horizon, me laughing when the colors ran off the page. After he passed, I packed away the brushes. I told myself I didn't have the heart for it anymore. But that morning, something changed. Maybe it was Michael's letter. Maybe it was the silence that no longer felt empty. I took one of his old canvases from the corner, untouched, yellowed with age, and set it on the easel. The first brushstroke felt like exhaling after years of holding my breath. Color after color spilled across the canvas. Not perfect, not planned, just alive. I didn't know what I was painting until I stepped back and saw it. The same woman from his painting, standing at the edge of the sea. Only now she was smiling. She wasn't waiting anymore. She'd already begun walking forward. Later that week, I brought the finished painting to Harper. He opened the door, saw the canvas, and froze. His hand trembled when he touched it. "She's finally at peace," he whispered. "You gave her the ending my son never could." I smiled, tears stinging my eyes. "Maybe we both needed to finish the same story." He nodded slowly. "And you did." The next morning, Brooks Bay's gallery opened its doors early. Harper had insisted the painting be displayed beside Michael's last work, the one that had first drawn me in. Two women now stood side by side, one facing the ocean, the other walking toward it. The visitors didn't know my story, and I didn't offer it. They just stood, quietly, some smiling, some crying, like the paintings were saying something words couldn't. I left before noon. The sea was calling again. On the pier, the tide reached for the sand, retreated, and returned. Endless, patient, forgiving. I took the old key from my pocket and tossed it gently into the waves. It glimmered once in the sunlight before disappearing below. Some stories don't need locks anymore. That night, I sat by the window, writing a letter of my own. Not to anyone, but for whoever might someday find it. If you ever wake up and feel that your life has already happened, look closer. The tide still comes in. Start again, even if you start small. Begin where it hurts. Begin anyway. I folded the letter and tucked it behind the frame of my painting. Maybe someone will find it someday, just as I found Michael's. Maybe they'll need it the same way I once did. When I finally went to bed, I left the lamp on. Outside, the sea breathed softly, steady and sure. And for the first time in a long, long while, so did I.